Hey, it's Leaky Senpai, and today we're going to be continuing Across the Grooves. Now, we last ended off in Chapter 3, which is London. So let's get started. It's almost 10 o'clock in the morning, local time. I'm in a pub in Holborn with a large coffee and a phone book in front of me. Yesterday, when the train got in, I had scurried to the underground without a backward glance. I had the feeling that several people were seeking me out in the crowd, but I don't know if it was my paranoia at work or if Eva really did have henchmen ready on the station platform to intercept the record. Whatever the case, I managed to jump onto a train without confrontation. Considering circumstances, it was probably risky to stay close to the station, so I made the journey to a little hotel that I stayed in for a conference, organized by my employers at the bank last spring. After my difficult day, which had ended with me crossing London, constantly checking over my shoulders to make sure I wasn't being followed, I decided to get an early night. Which is why I found myself at a relatively early hour making a list of the city's record stores with the hope that someone will be able to help me find Ulysses' trail again. I take a mouthful of my cooling coffee, glancing at my handbag. The room that I booked didn't have a safe, so I brought the record with me, not daring to trust it to the reception desk. I turned the page of the phone book, continuing my selection. To avoid spending too much time traveling, I try to restrict myself to the Mayfair and the Covent Garden areas, which have the advantage of being central and being part of the supposedly trendy districts. There's no point making a list as long as my arm. 3 well-chosen record stores should be enough for me to find the answers to my questions. And if none of them can help me, I'm pretty sure that at least one of them would be able to point me in the direction of a colleague who may know more. Record store owners are like big cats. Each one has their own hunting ground, but they often quench their thirst at the same watering hole. Of course, I began by checking the address of Alan O'Reilly's store, Patricia's friend. His store, Yard Sale Records, is on Carnaby Street. The road is well known for being crammed with clothes and thrift stores. I should be able to buy myself a few clothes there without breaking the bank. With the disappearance of my case, I had to resign myself of wearing yesterday's clothes, which had already been through the clammy filth of the subway of 2 cities, a train journey, and all which have prompted me to start the day with a bit of shopping. I confess, when I got up this morning, after that setback, giving up my search and going back to Bordeaux certainly crossed my mind. But I quickly changed my mind. After all, my apartment had been searched before I left. If I give up now, it's only a matter of time before someone manages to steal the record from me. And I need to know what happened to Ulysses. Not to mention I still intend to learn how to use the record to return to my reality. Even if the people I've spoken to up to now haven't given me much hope of success in that particular venture, I turn back to the phone book. I add a Strawberry Fields record store to my list. The store claims to be the oldest and the most psychedelic in the city since 1966. In other words, since the great days of swinging London. Considering the age of the store, I imagine there's a strong possibility that Ulysses has been there. And, to finish a little further away, in Mayfair, Sidecar Vinyls is specialized in second-hand records with an advert that says True Rock and Roll, Garage, and 60s. I gulp down the rest of my coffee, pay my bill at the bar, as it is customary this side of the channel. Then I head west along New Oxford Street. The sky is overcast, but not threatening rain. I decided this walk will do me good, especially as Carnaby Street is only half an hour away on foot, as far as I recall. On the way, I stop at a Marks and Spencer that I come across. To deal with my most pressing needs, I buy a small travel bag and throw in some toiletries, underwear, and a few pairs of warm tights to combat the hostile chill of the British fall. With the prices in mind, I try to stick to the strictly necessary. Even if, theoretically, this London escapade will be erased when I listen to the record again, it would be annoying to run short of funds before that. Quarter of an hour later, I'm in Carnaby Street. I begin, as planned, by visiting a few thrift stores. Recreating a wardrobe from nothing, even a basic one, seems like an almost impossible task which could easily take all day. So I try not to get distracted and to focus on the basics. I remember Patricia's mark that evening before and make sure I'm not dressed in a too professional style. In the end, I have a few tops that can be worn anywhere, a turtleneck sweater, 2 pairs of faded jeans, and a short skirt. I don't know if I'll have a chance to wear it, but I couldn't resist the very 60s pale blue shift dress. It's probably not wise, but I think I can allow myself one impulse buy after all. That should be enough for a few days. And if my wanderings take me to another country again, at least I'll be traveling light. I use the store fitting room to change and slip my dirty clothes in a pocket of my travel bag. Instantly, I feel much better with clean clothes. I mean, I bought it at a thrift store. I don't know how clean that is, but I guess. I look at the time. It's almost midday. I decided that I spent enough time on provisions. It's time to focus on my main reason for coming here. When I get to Yard Sale Records, the store just plunged in darkness. A notice taped to the door window tells me in handwritten capital letters, "Won't open until late. Come back later. Sorry/not sorry, Alan." Too bad. I'll just have to come back later. Maybe Patricia's friend will have decided to get out of bed by then? Which one's closer? This is the older one. Let's go to that one. Stuck between a bookstore and a pub, the faded old wooden facade of Strawberry Fields Record Store exudes character. The store is very well located on a touristy little pedestrian street. When I push open the door, my nostrils are assaulted by the scents of incense and patchouli. The interior, which is lit by a few floor lamps, is long and narrow, with tiers of records along each side. The A-side of Forever Change plays at a volume as subdued as the lighting. Rare records are displayed along the walls, high up, with prices best described as exorbitant. To tell the truth, I feel more like I walked into a museum than a shop. Whilst my eyes have become accustomed to the gloom, I make out, behind the counter, an old man with half-moon glasses, long white hair, and a beard just as white and just as long. He's reading a battered paperback copy of the collection works of Allen Ginsberg, a roll-up burned at the corner of his mouth. I approach the counter and venture a shy hello. I have a strong feeling that I'm disturbing him. The old man doesn't even glance up at me. I tried a second louder hello, with the same result. "Gwen's coming," the man mutters into his beard. I seriously consider leaving when the beaded curtains at the back of the shop separate with a jingle, and a young woman with long blonde hair and a welcoming smile appears. "Sorry for taking so long. I was just feeding Rob's cats." Can I help you? Either I can ask if she knows the Ulysses or I can bring up the record, hopefully without revealing too much. I could also decide that I'm wasting my time, make up something, and then slip away. Talk about Ulysses. Yes, it may sound a bit odd to you, but I'm looking for a friend of mine. A record store owner, Ulysses. Does that ring any bells? Rob lifts his eyes from the book and stares at me. Long brown, curly hair, dark-skinned, glasses. He's been in London a few months ago? You know, there's a lot of record collectors. I don't know all of them. She turns to the old man. How about you, Rob? Ring any bells? Rob relights a cigarette and takes a long, deep drag. It was at that moment that I realized, from the characteristic smell of the smoke he exhaled, that his rolled up contained more than just tobacco. Nope, sorry, doesn't ring any bells. We have a lot of people passing through this shop. It's a pretty touristy area, you know. Usually it's Gwen who takes care of customers. If she don't remember your friend, I doubt I could help. My memory isn't what it was. As if to prove his words, Rob takes another deep pull on his joint and goes back to his book. Gwen shrugs, looking sorry. Insists. Are you sure? He specializes in psychedelic music. I'd be surprised if you don't know him. He might have had a record to appraise with him, an acetate 7-inch white label. Really? It doesn't strike a chord? Oh, yes, you should have said. Actually, someone did come by with a record like that. Gwen turns to Rob. It was in September when you were at Stonehenge with your hippie friends. To tell the truth, I completely forgotten about it. As Rob said, we have so many people coming through. And then, the weirdos who think they're sitting on a gold mine and try to flog us at a busted up umpteenth release of Sgt. Pepper, there are shed loads of them. He was looking for information about his record, but what was weird was that he refused to put it on the record player. He told me it was the type of thing, if you have to listen to it, you can't help me. So, well, I couldn't do much for him. Rob puts his book down on the counter, crushes out his roach, and gets out of his chair. His lethargy seems to dissipate instantly. Wait a second. You're telling me that someone came to the shop with Crowley's legendary record and that you let him leave? Gwen blushes and stammers an excuse. How was I supposed to know it was worth something? Rob turns to me and gazes at me intently. Do you know where that record is? I can give you a good price. You can't lie. I'm sorry, I don't know where it is. Of course that is a lie, but frankly, I don't want to give up the information. I figure I've already got enough people after me. Obviously, Rob is disappointed. Ah, pity. If you do find your friend and he wants to part with it, don't hesitate to send him to see me, okay? Wait a minute. You said it's a Crowley recording, right? There's plenty of stories going around. That's just one that seems most plausible to me. It's the one which best fit with the supposed powers which people have claimed the record has. I had this shop since the 60s. I've seen generations of musicians. The recording comes up in conversation pretty often. As a record collector, I've always dreamt of getting my hands on it, if it does really exist. So-called powers. Or tell me a story too. So-called powers. Could you tell me more of these so-called powers? Rob shrugs. Most of it's cock and bull stories. I've heard all sorts. Some people claim it's an amazing psychedelic trip, better than listening to the second disc of Electric Ladyland of Sandoz. Others say they know someone who had listened to the record and that person had met God or aliens or leprechauns or whatever. To tell the truth, it's the historical value that interests me. In almost 40 years in this job, I've seen quite a few gems, test printings of Airplane, a complete collection of originals from the Vertigo label, a factory seal copy of something tarot. But that record is a holy grail of record collectors. One last question. If you're looking for the information about the recording, who would you ask? Rob thinks for a moment. I'm not really sure. What about your old mate Art? Gwen turns to me. When he comes by the shop, you can't stop the two of them. I think he's the only person I know who has more of a rock history buff than Stoney. Hearing the nickname Stoney, Rob throws a murderous glance at Gwen, who seems to not notice or not care. The only problem is that Art doesn't live in London anymore. When the house prices went up, he moved to Scotland. Art? Can you please give me his full name? Arthur Pullman. He works for the BBC on the radio. Ooh! Alrighty, connection. I realized it was probably the Putman Enzo mentioned. As for her address, have we got written it down somewhere, Gwen? Gwen shrugs. I can look in the papers, but I can't promise anything. Got plenty of time. That'd be very kind of you. I'll do it right now. It might take a bit of time, though. If you saw the mess in the back of the shop... It's okay. I've got plenty of time. As she's about to go to the back of the store, Rob puts his hand on her shoulder to stop her. Hey, this is a record shop, not a detective agency. Sorry, but if you're not here to buy... I understand. Sorry, I won't bother you anymore. Thanks so much for your help. Gwen gives me a little wave and I leave the store. Sidecar. I don't think it's nighttime yet. Sidecar Vinyls looks like a garage transformed into a record store. There are two Harley Davidsons parked near the entrance, and I'm obliged to squeeze past, straddling some boxes of records to get to the counter, which stretches across the back wall. The back of the store is windowless, and the cold light of the neon tubes create a surprisingly sterile atmosphere. A small group of leather-clad people huddle around the bar, with bottles and cans of beers in their hands. It's a radical change of ambience compared to the subdued atmosphere and the meticulous order of Rob and Gwen's store. I'm asking myself what I'm doing here when the person who I was supposed must be the owner, a middle-aged man with a mustache, wearing a leather jacket and a Motorhead t-shirt stretched across his round belly, urges me not to be scared and to come closer, all with a barely disguised French accent. I decided to answer him in the language of Modelier? Bonjour, vous parlez français? I hope I'm not saying... Okay, that was just that. The man seems to be caught off guard and starts to laugh after a moment of hesitation. He turns to the group and says in English on their behalf, "Hey guys, say hello to the froggy." They turn to look at me and hear a chorus of hello along with a few bonjour mademoiselle from the bolder ones. Excuse the weirdos, it's meeting day of the Mayfair Motor Club, which I am a member of. He holds out a hand and I shake it. Didier? Nice to meet you. Tell me, what brings you here? I don't suppose you're here to discuss Chokes and Strokes volume. I can't imagine Ulysses in this territory. There's very little chance I'll get any useful information, but for now that I'm here, I figure I might as well ask a few questions. I'm looking for a friend who was researching a record. I think that he came to London, so I'm checking out some record stores in case someone has seen him. He's a record store owner, too. Oh, as far as I'm concerned, records pay the bills. Hollies are my real passion. And I need a bit more information. What's your mate's name? Ulysses. Brown curly hair, dark skin, glasses. Didier shakes his head. Nope, sorry, doesn't ring any bells. And the record he's researching? It's an acetate, 7-inch white label. Diddler smiles and lets off a triumphant thundering aha! And you're going to tell me that you can't describe the music that's on it, aren't you? Yes, that's right. I heard about that record. I got an old pal that's been looking for it for years. I haven't considered this possibility. Could it be someone I've already met? I could play the innocent and try to learn more. I could also be tough and shut down any attempts at negotiation. Candidly. Ah, really? Who's that? Maybe I've already met them. Oh yes, most likely. He's obsessed by the record and he thinks that listening to it will literally change his life. His name is Jean-Luc, but he calls himself Eddie Black. Ring any bells? Seeing my face, Diddler immediately realizes that's a yes. It does ring a bell. Ah, hell, I hope he wasn't too crass with you. I promise you, he's a lovely guy, but as I said, he's obsessed by the record. I really don't know what to think. I really don't know what to think, to be honest. On one hand, he behaved like someone who was up to something. On the other, I don't have any real reason to accuse him of anything. I understand that maybe the circumstances of your meeting wasn't ideal. But knowing Jean-Luc, I'm sure it was mostly awkwardness. We have known each other since we were kids, us two. I swear on my life, he's a good kid. Good guy. And if you did let him listen to the record. I'm sorry, but that's out of the question. Despite your pleading in his favor, I don't trust him. We don't know each other, after all, and the record is very important to me. I'm sorry. It's fine, I understand. Well, I've tried. The least I can do for my mate. If you ever change your mind, you know where to find me. One call to Jean-Luc and he'll come running double time, that's for sure. Fine, I'll keep that in mind. Sorry to disturb you. Have a good afternoon. I turn around, clamber between their records and the motorbikes again, and find myself back in the street. I walk quickly from the store, hoping that to cap it all after this, I won't be followed by a biker gang. They are light in movement, when my steps have lead me back to Alan's store this time. A few loafs loitering among the boxes, while a young girl, focusing on her listening, headphones firmly in place, moved the needle back and forth on the record player in one of the booths. The background music is folk, and little, odd yet inspired, topped by a husky voice which murmurs in Spanish. The box seems to contain quite a few new releases, small press of alternative brands. If they have a second-hand section, I don't know where it would be, which isn't exactly a good sign for my search. Behind the counter, the two store clerks seem to be arguing. I move closer. Just because we open up doesn't mean you can subject us to your wishy-washy folk music. It's way too late in the day for this. Right, but first of all, it's not wishy-washy folk music. It's the latest record from Devendra Banhart. It's a new import which we just got in, and second, the guy is a genius. And, as Alan once said, again, forgot to put his alarm on. We could have said it still counts as morning, right? Fine then, But I get to choose the next record. Deal? Deal. As long as it's not your pseudo-feminist second-rate Sonic Youth. Slater Kinney second-rate Sonic Youth? It's the rock record of the year. And either it's that or it's the new Franz Ferdinand, then nobody wins. We've been listening to that on repeat for the last month. We sell 3 copies every time we play it, Garrett. Do you like being able to play your rent at the end of the month? Excuse me? Beth turns to me, beaming. Oh, sorry, excuse me. I have to interrupt my work for reasons of cultural divergence with my colleague, but he'll keep. My colleague rolls his eyes. What can I do for you? I'm looking for an Alan O'Reilly. What is it about? If it's about an unpaid bill or something like that, it'll be better to come back tomorrow. I'm not sure the boss is in the right state. No, one of his friends sent me. Ah, I see. It's about a rare record. An acetate 7-inch white label. Does that ring any bells? How about you stop announcing it to anybody, though? Well, I know what an acetate is, but I need a bit more detail. Do you know the artist? The name of the track? Beth clearly has no idea what I'm talking about. I'm about to give up when the other employee, Garrett, comes over. Maybe we should send her to see the boss? Do you reckon? I'm not sure Alan's functioning well enough for a conversation to last longer than 3 words. Yes, but I overheard what you were saying. Alan was talking about that record not long ago, with the geezer who came by this shop a few times, you know? Garrett turns to me. He was French, too. Dark hair, dark skin, glasses. That's the one. He had an unusual name that sounded like James Joyce's book, Ulysses. Garrett says the name English style, pronouncing the final S. I corrected him. Ulysses. Right, that's it. Do you know him? He's a friend, I guess you could say. I'm looking for him. Especially if you talk to the boss. They had some dealings together. They were old friends from what I understood. They knew each other back when the boss lived in Paris. Ben points to the left of the counter at a spiral staircase. He's upstairs in the second-hand section. As I climb the stairs, the music from the ground floor gradually fades, and when I reach the upper floor, there's a radically different atmosphere. The upper floor is engulfed in shadow. The lights off, the space lit only by a large window which runs the whole length of the wall. The room is a mess, with boxes of records piled up all over the place, making a striking contrast with the skillfully created trendiness of the ground floor. The final notes of Velvet Underground's Sunday Morning play on the sound system and are followed by an English folk track from the same period, probably a cassette tape compilation. At the end of the room, behind a desk overflowing with paperwork, a large red-headed guy sits. I'm trying to figure out if that's the guy's face or not in this picture. It looks a little weird. Or rather, sprawled in his chair, his head back and a t-shirt over his face. Ah, okay, that makes more sense. I'm like, yo, like, why he look like that? There's an empty beer mug in one hand, a tube of aspirin in the other, and a cup of steaming tea cooling on the desk. I approach the desk nervously and clear my throat. Without moving, Alan growls something that sounds like, Beth, I told you not today, but punctuated with various obscenities. It's not Beth. I come from Patricia's. My companion lifts the corner of the t-shirt, glances at me, and lets out a long sigh and sits up in his chair. Even now, on which is apparently a bad day, he gives off a calm force which I find strangely attractive. Patricia's? Yes, it's her who sent me. He asks who I am, in a strongly accented French, the R's rolled. I'm Alice. I'm looking for Ulysses. Ulysses from Paris? Patricia's ex? Yes, if you like that, Ulysses. Alice seems to be having trouble connecting the various facts of our rambling conversation. And you are... Alice, I just told you. I'm also Ulysses' ex, and I'm looking for him. Alan gestures me to wait. To summarize, you're Alice, Ulysses' ex from before he moved to Paris, is that right? I nod. And you're looking for him... What can I do for you? Do you know where Ulysses is? Do you know where to find him? Yes. I mean, no. Not really. Alan rolls his eyes. Sorry, I just woke up and, well, we were a bit wasted last night. What do you do this evening? I don't have anything planned at this moment. There's a gig in a pub not far away. I plan on going, Beth, Garrett, and I. Can we meet there, 6 p.m.? I need a little time to recover from my rough night. Alan puts his t-shirt back over his face, which seems to mean that our conversation is over. Well, that's one way to end a conversation, I guess. When I go back down the stairs, Beth signals me to come over. So, he had a rough night. I told you. He told me to join you at the pub this evening. Do you have the address? Oh, yes. The Fox and Sparrow. She notes the address down on a paper for me. So I'll see you there? Unless you want to stay here till closing time, it's up to you. We got good music and a few magazines to pass the time if you haven't got anything better to do in the meanwhile. For now, I've been to all the record stores I wanted to see. Rather than mooching away the rest of the afternoon or tucking myself away at the pub, I could stay here. Good idea, thanks for the offer. It'll give me a chance to catch up with what's new. We got listening booths to help yourself. I thank Beth and head off in search of a few records to listen to. The Fox and Sparrow is only 2 streets away from Yard Sale Records, a typical London pub. From outside, I can't see Alan or his 2 employees. I suppose I might be a bit early, or perhaps they're a bit late. I considered waiting for them outside, but decided against it, so I head into the smoky warmth of the pub. The concert has already started. At the end of the room, on a platform, the band is playing a folk tune with a strange pagan sound. I order a drink and move closer to the stage. I allow the singer's incantation to lull me. She is completely immersed in her performance, which is punctuated by a large bearded man who dumped on a big drum with a stick, and is accompanied by a few crystalline guitar notes and the low humming of a cello. I take a moment to consider today's inquiries. They weren't a huge success. At least I have a full name now, Arthur Pullman, and a destination, Scotland. It's not much, but it's better than nothing. Anyway, all I can hope for is Alan would have some answers for me. At least it seems I managed to shake off Eva for the time being. But something tells me it's just a temporary reprieve. I'm dragged away from my musings by a hand on my shoulder. The band do a fantastic version of Willow's song. You know, the track from the soundtrack of the Wicker Man? I love the interpretation of it. I look up at my companion. I realize that he must have measured at least 6'3", something I haven't noticed when he was slumped behind his desk. Do you like it? Yes, I like it a lot. He gestures that he haven't heard me with the volume of the band. I hesitate to take his arm so that I can repeat into his ears. Seeing my hesitation, he leans down just as I'm standing up on my tippy toes. In the confusion of the moment, I simply tell him, yes, it's great. Alan gives me a slightly embarrassed smile. Oh, okay. There's a moment of silence before I realize I haven't released his arm. I let go, a little hastily, hoping I'm not blushing at my own awkwardness. I take a step back. He puts a hand on my shoulders and says into my ear, "We're managing to find a table. Are you coming? Hope you'll be able to talk more easily." Beth is waiting for us at a table on the other side of the pub, far enough from the stage for the music to be at a reasonable level to talk without yelling. Garrett joins us, carrying 3 pints of beer, which teetered dangerously between his hands. He slides one over to Alan, another to Beth. "Sorry, I didn't know what you were drinking." I've raised my scarcely touched gin and tonic. "I'm all set, thanks." "We're going to go over and listen. Can you keep our seats for after the set?" Alan agrees with a thumbs up. Garrett and Beth vanishes into the crowd around the stage, and Alan turns to me. "I'm sorry about earlier. I went to see her main Dune in concert last night, and we had a drinks afterwards, and it got a little out of control. It doesn't happen as often as all that, but well, I admit that today's been a little difficult. Anyway, as you can see, I'm feeling much better tonight." Alan takes a long swig of his beer. "So, have you seen Patricia lately? Is she okay?" "It's been ages since I've been in touch with her. I'm not great with the telephone." "Listen, she seemed pretty well." "Oh, that's good. I lived in Paris for 2 years, and I went for my last year of uni. Then I got a job in the record store in the... I don't know how to pronounce that word. And that's where I met her. Afterwards, I came back to the UK to start up my own shop, and we managed to stay in touch. I spent a weekend in Paris for at least once a year, and she spends a weekend in London from time to time. That said, when I saw Ulysses come in the shop last month, I was a bit surprised. I bumped into him a few times when he was with Patty, a real great guy, but we lost touch when I moved to London. Do you know where he is now? He told me he was going to keep tracking down his record. According to Rob said, his next step would be Scotland. Is that what he told you too? Alan raises a wary eyebrow. Rob? That guy at Strawberry Fields Records? Oh, Stoney? I don't know Ulysses have gone and seen him. But think about it, it's not such a bad idea. He's been in the scene for such a long time. There's talk of him meeting an Arthur Pullman. Does that mean anything to you? Alan shrugs. No, nothing at all, sorry. Hell, it doesn't help me much. Scotland's pretty big. We're interrupted by Beth, who just sat down next to me on the bench seat. Glasgow. Pardon? Your bloke, Ulysses, he said he was heading for Glasgow. Beth crosses her arm, a mischievous smile on her lips. Luckily, there's someone who still have a memory on the team. Alan sits up in his chair, a glimmer of understanding suddenly on his face. Oh, yes, that's right. Now you come to mention it. In fact, I'm sure I gave him the address of my old mate Yargos. He works in this kind of trendy bar restaurant in the center of Glasgow, the Archery. Beth lifts her empty glass sadly. Hey, shall we get another drink? Will you help me, Alice? Alan, can you keep the table, please? Shouldn't we wait for Garrett? I think Garrett's occupied. His boyfriend just got here. Beth glanced over the other side of the bar, and there's Garrett stationed near the stage, discreetly holding hands with a young bearded man. Don't move, Alice. I'll go. Beth puts her hand on his shoulder to stop him from raising. No, stay here, please. I need some girl talk with Alice. I go over to the bar with Beth. You say Ulysses was in Glasgow? Yes, that's what he said when he stopped by the last time. Sorry for buttonholing you like this, but I just wanted to talk to you about something else. Beth glances over my shoulder at our table. I think the boss fancies you. Why not? Oh, yes? I have to admit, I haven't noticed. Beth takes a deep breath. Alan probably told you he moved to England to set up his own shop, but actually he left Paris to be with his missus. Unfortunately, they split up a few months ago. It was pretty messy. Since then, he's been going through a rough time. We joke about him not being able to wake up to open a shop, but honestly, he's been in a bad way since the breakup. It really shook him up. When I saw him come downstairs earlier, all showered and perfumed, well, anyway, looking very dapper despite the hangover, I thought to myself that perhaps you were here for a reason. Think about it. Okay, I'll think about it. No pressure, eh? I'm just telling you, it's your choice. The overworked barman finally decides to come and take our order. We order. I manage to pay for my round despite Beth's objection, and we go back to our table. We chat for a while. I go back to the stage to watch the end of the concert. We order a last drink. Alan tells me funny stories about his life in Paris and London. He tells me about how he met Ulysses. I felt a twinge of sadness. I recall the good years we had together with a strange sense of déjà vu, or more like déjà vu? I don't know how to pronounce that. Like I've already lived this, which I couldn't explain to myself. Alan's a charming guy. I get the feeling that hiding beneath the imposing physique and that Canadian lumberjack exterior, there is a sensitive child. I think if the circumstances allow it, we could easily become friends. We're in the middle of a lively discussion, comparing the careers of Bob Dylan and Leonard Cohen, when the bell rings for last orders and closing time. I don't think it'll be long before they kick us out. Should I walk you back to your hotel? I take a moment to think about my answer. Either Alan extremely respectful for someone who supposedly fancied me, or Beth has misread his behavior. I could take initiative myself and be more forward. Whether to decide, I couldn't see myself going back to my hotel on my own, not after the scare I had last night from before last, or my conversation with Eve in the Buffett car. Go take the initiative. I put my hand on his. I was thinking that maybe we could continue this conversation. How about a drink at your place? With pleasure. Out of the corner of my eye, I see a knowing smile spread across Beth's face. Right, I think it's time we get going. Don't worry about your alarm for tomorrow. I'll sort it with Garrett for us to do the opening. We say goodbye, go out of the pub, and head off in different directions. Allie and I continue to talk about music on the walk, and it's only when our steps bring us to a shop that I realize he lives there. Rather than using the front door, Alan opens the little door on the side, which leads to the upper floors. We arrive directly to the upper floor of the store through a back entrance. Alan goes in front. I try to follow, groping my way through the shadow, guiding myself by the boxes of records. He reaches his desk, switches on the lamp, then he leans down and produces a bottle of whiskey and 2 glasses from the drawer. When I told you that music was my life, I wasn't joking, as you can see. You live here? Yes, my wife and I separated last year. She kept the flat after the divorce. Me, I moved in here. To start with it was in the meantime, but it was a temporary measure that is sneakily transforming itself into a permanent solution, if you can see what I mean. He points at a door with a private sign behind us. When I did the work for the shop, we kept a separate space with the kitchen and the shower. For convenience, it was easy to turn it into a flat. We go into a private area. Alan ignores the switch for the main light and turns on a few lamps instead, no doubt trying to create a more intimate atmosphere. We're in a big rectangular area with a kitchenette and the door leading to the bathroom on one side. On the other side, a big mattress lays in ancient parquet, and a long farm table surrounded by mismatched chairs sat in the middle. I move closer to him, take his glass and place it on the table. I try to embrace him, but our difference in height makes it a complicated exercise. He leans towards me and kisses me with delightful awkwardness, unsure what to do with his long lips. He backs off and caresses my cheeks softly with his thumb, his hand cupping my chin. I felt a wavering, a hesitation. For an instant, my gaze is lost in his eyes. Then he says, in a murmur dragged from deep in his chest, "You know, I'm not sure I'm ready to start anything with anyone." I answer him with all the tenderness I can sum up. "Don't worry, I'm just passing through." I hold onto his back as he swings me around and drops me gently on the bed. Then I let myself be swallowed up by pleasure in the night. The morning coming through the window wakes me, the pallid light of a London morning in fall. Alan is still fast asleep. I decided not to wake him. It takes a concerted effort of will to extract myself from the snug comfort of the quilt. The old espresso machine on the countertop in the kitchen table area looks like it required a degree of civil aviation to get something drinkable. So I fall back to my other source of morning relief, a good hot shower. I get some clean clothes from my bag. Something tells me that there's a chance that Eva and her henchmen are watching the stations, so I try to choose an outfit as different as possible from the one that I wore when I arrived to London, to reduce the risk of being recognized. In the same vein, I decided to put my hair up, something I rarely do. Then I shut myself in the bathroom. It's clean, but dark. When I come out, Alan is sitting at the big table, a cigarette and a coffee, both smoking close by. I help myself to your shower. "I'm glad you did. I'm afraid I don't have much to eat, but would you like a coffee?" "Absolutely. I didn't dare to touch your machine. It looks tricky to handle." Alan puts his cigarette in the ashtray and heads to the kitchenette and embarks on what looks like a chain of meticulous actions. It's one of the only things I wanted to keep after the divorce. In any case, my ex was incapable of using it without spraying coffee all over the kitchen. It does make an excellent cup of coffee, but it has to be tamed. He puts the espresso in front of me. Do you want a cigarette to complete your breakfast of champions? Hard to resist the calls of nicotine. Thanks. I hope when I listen to the record again, I'm back in a reality where I managed to quit smoking. So what are your plans for today? I suppose the next step will be to take the first train to Scotland, with a quick stop to check out of my hotel. You're leaving London already? I think for a moment. It seemed like a no-brainer, but it's probably worth pondering all the same. Let's just say I don't see what other information I could glean by staying here. I got a name, Arthur Pullman, in a place, Glasgow. You already knew Ulysses and you put him up for a few days, but even you don't know any more than that. All I can do is cross my fingers and hope that the trail doesn't dry up. And if this Arthur Pullman really knows more about the record, maybe he'll be able to finally give me some answers. Alan takes a drag of his cigarette, thinking. This may seem a bit sudden, but what would you say if I offered to come with you? His suggestion takes me completely unawares. I'm about to open my mouth to answer, but Alan continues. I don't know. I got a good feeling about you, Alice. I like to see where it takes us. If I let you leave now, I got a feeling that I might be missing out on something amazing. How did my love life become so complicated in so little time? I have a fleeting thought of Jean-Baptiste. Wasn't the whole point of this in the beginning to keep it to the life that I had with him? And then there's Ulysses, who is very much on my mind. I often thought by reopening that old wound in my heart, I'd be opening up a Pandora's box. Patrice in Paris, and now Alan. I know that this interlude will probably cease to exist when I listen to the record again, but was it right for me to get involved in anything more than just sex? What do you say? Let's go. At least you'll have some kind of protection or bodyguard, let's just say. I take a deep breath and answer. Okay. Alan looks surprised. Really? I gotta admit, I expected an argument. So just to be clear, I don't know either where this is taking us. Probably nowhere. I still have a lot of things to sort in my head, but I need to move forward. Giving you and me a chance, well, that's a step in the right direction. I shrug. Later on, well, who knows? I'm not promising anything either, but I'd have kicked myself for missing the opportunity. So, good. So off to Glasgow then, right? That's right. Okay, I'll just need an hour or so to let Beth and Garrett know and then plan my French leave. That's fine. It'll give me time to check out of my hotel. Meet you here after? Okay. Chapter 4. Glasgow. Only once the train is a good distance out of London do I finally begin to relax. As I feared, Eva had been watching the comings and goings at the station. I saw her as I was going to the platform, but I was inconspicuous enough to pass right next to her without being recognized. Alan, with his imposing build, had probably helped to shield me from her view. Told you, bodyguard. I'm almost certain that I managed to get on the train without her seeing me, but I'm sure she wasn't alone. If one of her collaborators spotted me, then she knows my destination. To be on the safe side, I think it's best to assume that it's only a matter of time before she follows me to Glasgow. I try to organize my thoughts. My present situation is pretty awkward. The trail that Ulysses has left isn't easy to follow, and it seems to be petering on as I press on. Then again, if he's being pursued by Eva's organization too, I can understand why he would have tried to keep as low as a profile as possible. I hope that this Arthur Pullman will finally be able to tell me more about the record if I do manage to find him. For the time being, all I've been able to scrape together are rumors and various contradictory stories. It feels like I have more and more questions and no answers. I realize that I let Alan embark on this adventure without him knowing all the ins and outs. Why not use the travel time to tell him about my quest? Despite everything, I decided to omit for the time being the supernatural elements of my story. So, as the countryside rushes past the window, we throw ourselves into a lively discussion in the 5 hours, and the train seemed to flash by in moments. After visiting 2 capitals, finding myself in a more modestly sized city like Glasgow was a breath of fresh air. The station is right in the city center, which we crossed on foot, heading for the establishment where his friend Yargos worked. We entered the ground floor of an old building, a small room with mismatched furniture and a fire burning in a great stone fireplace. At the end of the room, a long counter stretches across its width. A Mediterranean-looking man seems to be absorbed in carefully preparing a basket of fresh vegetables. Probably the famous Yargos. As we approach, Yargos looks up and, seeing Alan, a broad smile lights up his face. The 2 men hug over the counter. Yargos speaks. Oh, darn it. I missed the thing. I admit, I have some difficulty understanding him. Quickly sensing my dismay, Alan presents me in French. This is Alice, a friend. Yargo slips smoothly into a gerbil French, which is just as strong as a Greek accent. Ah, another of her French pals. He wipes his hand roughly on his apron, but he holds out his wrist over the counter. I shake it as best I can. Yargos. Nice to meet you. I'm Alice. So, tell me, how did the Nutter convince you to come so far north? He points his knife at Alan. Unless it's you who managed to get rid of the old rogue out of his record store. He promised to visit me for years. I begin to give up hope. Actually, Alice is looking for a mutual friend who recently came to Glasgow. Ah, your pal Ulysses, right? I nod. That's right. Yes, he was in Glasgow, about 2 weeks ago? Do you know what he was doing here? Do you know where he went next? Do you know where he went next? No, he didn't tell me, but I don't think he stayed in Glasgow long. He seemed to be passing through. Do you happen to mention Arthur Pullman? The steadily crack of the knife on the chopping board stops for a moment as Yargo tries to recall the details. Yes, a radio presenter, right? That's right. Did he say where he thought he'd find him? No, I'm sorry. Maybe we could go and try to find something out at the local radio station? If I had to get the information about a radio presenter, that's definitely where I'd start. We most like we mostly listen to big national radio stations here, but if you try Sub-City, it's the university radio. They don't broadcast all the time, but they do a great mix the evenings. We play here often in the restaurant. No commercials, just a reminder of the name of the station from time to time. Here, try this. Without warning, Yargos placed 2 plates on the counter. They contain a beautifully served mix of vegetables. Alan smiles at me. Go ahead, you'll see this guy's a genius. I take a mouthful and discover that he's right. It's delicious. So, do you like it? I think I finally managed to balance the bitterness of horseradish. It's really delicious. I was a waiter in the restaurant where Yargos worked for 6 months in Paris. We used to meet up in the backyard for a smoke between services. Ah, good days. I worked in London for a time after, then I had an opportunity to open the archery here in Glasgow with an associate. It was a long time ago. I wanted to pass in full vegetarian. Anyway, it's always a pleasure to try out your creations, Yargos. Alan turns to me. However, maybe we shouldn't hang about if we want to drop in the radio station. I give myself a few minutes to think over it. On one hand, something tells me that this lead will probably take us to a dead end. I can imagine a former BBC presenter broadcasting on a student radio station. On the other hand, I really don't have any idea what else to do, except to cling to the hope that somewhere, someone there will know where to find this Arthur Pullman. Unless, if I don't find the answers in the present, maybe revisiting the past. I instantly slip my hand in my bag to reassure myself that the record is still there. The trouble is I still don't know how to use it. I don't want to find myself stuck in a reality where I lost someone dear to me like Enzo. And then there's Alan. Should I warn him about what might happen if I listen to the record, or should I keep it to myself? Then again, I'm already in an alternate reality. My normal, the future where I believe was all mapped out, all of have been erased. But do you truly want to go back to that life? Alice noticed my hesitation and is waiting for an answer. Let's go to the campus radio. Okay, there's no harm in trying the campus radio. Something tells me you're not convinced about this lead. I don't know, Alan. A former BBC presenter on a student radio station, it seems extremely unlikely to me. But after all, you never know, huh? Perhaps someone there will know where to find this Arthur Pullman. And you never know, maybe Lucy dropped in to see them. For some reason we don't know yet. Quite. Well then, let's go to the campus. We say goodbye to Yargos and set off for the University of Glasgow. The quickest route is through Kevin Grove Park, which you cross beneath the Scottish drizzle. After half an hour of walking, we finally reached the University of Glasgow, a long Gothic-style building. After asking for the way at the reception and having wandered a little on the campus, we finally find the prefabricated building which holds Sub-City Radio. We climb the 2 floors and find ourselves in the antechamber separating the corridor from the studio. The illuminated on-air sign is switched off, so Alan knocks on the door and then it goes into the room. The studio is empty, except for a student who couldn't be more than 20 years old. He's wearing a threadbare Pink Floyd Division Bells, a patched t-shirt, and a pair of bulky headphones hanging around his neck. Seated in the large table, which must be used for broadcast, he looks up from taking his notes and greets us. Oh, hello, I'm DJ Saturn. I'm preparing my next mix here. Can you come back later? You're going to break my flow. Alan bursts out laughing. DJ Saturn. Really? Is that how you young blokes impress the birds these days? In my day, we learned the guitar. Intervene. Alan looks well on his way to terrorize a poor student. I decided to intervene. Wait, Alan, let me deal with this, please. We have a few questions for you if you don't mind. DJ Saturn gestures me to sit down. I take a seat opposite of him. Arthur Pullman. We're looking for a former BBC radio presenter, Arthur Pullman. Ring any bells? Student looks at us, incredulous. Do I know Arthur Pullman? Of course I know him. The guy's a legend. He had a late night show on BBC in the early 90s. He had some killer lineup. Thanks to him, loads of forgotten 60 bands got rediscovered. You can still get bootleg cassette tapes of his show. And then there are the live recordings. No one knew where he got them from, but he had an amazing collection of really excellent quality pirate recordings. He played them in his mix sometimes, especially the proto-metal Led Zepp, Heap, Black Sabbath. But why are you asking? I'm looking for a friend. Apparently he came through Glasgow and he was trying to meet this Arthur Pullman. Did he by any chance come here to the radio station? I don't think so. I'm in the studio a lot when I'm not in my lecture. It's better than my 9-foot digs. If you come to see us, I think I would know about it. What's your name? What's his name, your pal? Ulysses. A Frenchman, long hair, dark, glasses. No, sorry, if I'd seen him, I'd remember. I'm out of options. This is the end of the trail. I have no idea where to find this Arthur Pullman. I have no idea where Ulysses might have gone next. Seeing my dismay, Alan takes the lead. Thanks for talking to us. We'll let you get back to your flow. We leave the radio station and start walking back to the city center. We walk for a few minutes before Alan breaks the silence. I'm sorry, Alice. I think it's too late to get the train back. Let's get a hotel for the night and we'll see for tomorrow. Okay. I hesitate for a moment, considering the thought of postponing the end. Considering the thought of spending one more night with Alan. But what's the point? If I wait, I run the risk of Eva and her henchman finding me and taking the record. And now that all the leads have dried up, my only option is to search in the past and hope to find out where this Arthur Pullman is. And to try, if I can, not to come back to a reality that's too different. The only unresolved question is Alan. I turn to him and add, you know where we can find a record player? We passed a shop that sold a little portable record player earlier on the way to Yargo's place. If we don't hang about, it should still be open. But why? Just tell him. I take a deep breath and tell him everything, all in one go, without stopping and without hiding anything this time. Ulysses' parcel, the recording, listening, the upheaval that it made to my reality, and my decisions to figure all this out. Paris, then London, Enzo's story, Eva and her organization. All of it punctuated with my doubt and questions. Alan listens carefully without interrupting. I finish with, and there you go. Now you know it all. I hope you don't think I'm crazy. Alan takes me by the shoulder and holds me in his arm for a moment. I understand why you didn't want to tell me everything straight away, Alice. Because I too have been looking for the record. No. Oh, okay. After all, we've only known each other for 2 days. I wouldn't lie to you. The story of a magical record, well, it takes a bit of time to get my head around it. I can't imagine how much stress you've been under for these last few days. If you need to listen to the record, we'll find a way for you to listen to it. And no matter what happens, whether there's magic or not, I'll be there to go with you. Thank you for your support. Thank you for being so understanding. I'm really touched that you believe me and support me. We'll talk about it when you get back from the past with Arthur Pullman's address. Until then, I'm ready to put my skepticism aside. Well, I just hope you'll still be there, waiting for me to come back. Alan laughs. Where'd you think I'd go? Come on, let's go buy that record player before the shop shuts down. An hour later, we book into a little hotel next to the station. We go into the room and I open a little leather case which contains a record player. I plug it in and put the record in place. I turn to Alan. Come on, Alice, don't look like that. I'm staying right here, right next to you. Everything will be fine, you'll see. I don't try to disabuse him. He doesn't believe in the power of the record and it's probably for the best. I put my hand on the back of his neck and kiss him. If we don't meet up on the other side, I want you to know I had a wonderful time with you. We sat down right next to each other at the end of the bed. I put the headphones over my ears and switched the player to 45 revolutions per minute. Before putting the needle in the groove, I take Alan's hand. Then I close my eyes and let the music take me over. A percussion intro. I try to focus on Ulysses. How he looked, his voice, his laugh, his smell. The walls of the hotel room begin to resonate, to distort and stretch. The air blazes with iridescent particles, shimmering. Then the world implodes and I'm somewhere else.
Time falls on itself again. I focus on the atom heart, the nucleus of what we were, of what we are. Golden light through the window, evening sun
Ulysses closes his book and looks at me concerned. Are you okay? You stopped playing all of a sudden. I got the feeling you were somewhere else. No, not great. I have a sudden attack of panic, inexplicably and uncontrollably. I guess reliving these moments have upset me more than I expected, and I know that my time here in this moment is precious. Ulysses stands up. I'm gonna get a glass of water. I'll be right back. Don't move. I'll get it for you. When Ulysses goes to the kitchen, I have time to look into the mirror above the mantelpiece. I still have long hair. I cut it a month or two before we split up, which tells me we're probably sometime in the summer before our breakup. We were still happy back then. Then in September, at the start of the new school year, he began to become more distant. Was he already thinking of leaving back then? Ulysses gave me a glass of water. I drank. He sits down on the coffee table facing me, and he puts his hand on my thigh. Better? I nod. Thanks. I put the glass down on the piano. My time is short. I have to get to the point. This will probably sound strange, but do you know where I could find Arthur Pullman? Arthur Pullman? The radio presenter who played old records in the 90s? Yes. It's funny, there's actually a short article about it in Lesson Rocks last week. He snatches up the magazine on the coffee table, rifles quickly through it, and he holds it out to me on the right page. The heading says, Jimmy's Page Loch Ness house is sold. Apparently he bought the Boleskine house. Boleskine? It's a house in Scotland that Page, the Led Zeppelin guitarist, bought in the 70s. It appears to be some part of their film concert. The song remains the same. I gotta say, I'm not totally surprised. Pullman's always been a Led Zepp fan. He played a lot of their live footage on his shows. I put the magazine down in front of me on the piano stool. I hope I remember all this information when I go back to the present. I didn't know you knew so much about this stuff. It's because of Mark. He's a big fan of the guy. He got a cassette copies of almost all the shows. If you ask me, some of his mix choices aren't fantastic. Frankly, playing Ultimate Spinach straight after the Garden of Earthly Delights from the United States of America is almost tasteless. As for his most fanatical infatuation with Chelsea's Girl, anyway, all serious musologists agree that Desert Shore is undeniably Nico's best album. Ulysses. Why not mention the Marble Index while we're at it, insisting on being original no matter what? Having someone like Joe Boyd at the helm, that makes all the difference, doesn't it? He's the one who can thank for the 5 Leaves Left, for God's sake, Nick Drake's best record. Some people say that Pink Moon is better, but Ulysses is off. I know from experience he could go on like this for hours. I'm afraid I don't have hours. I grab his arm and look him in the eye. Ulysses. He stops in the middle of the sentence. Understanding lights up in his face. It's the record, isn't it? Oh! How? Yes. We're talking about the same thing? Yes, I'm listening. I listened to the record. And you come from a future where you need to find Arthur Pullman, right? I look away. I'm scared of telling him too much, that it may have an unpredictable impact on my reality. Ulysses seems surprisingly relieved. He takes me in his arms and we hold each other for a while. Then he emerges from our embrace and adds cheerfully, "That means that it didn't work." What? What didn't work? The walls of the apartment around us begin to dislocate. I don't need to explain to him. I can see his face that he understands what's happening. Alice, please, try to remember that we don't need to break up anymore. And that I don't have to leave you. That it didn't work. We don't need to. What do you mean, Ulysses? It's too late. It's a nice beat. Once again, I'm carried away by the flow of time to the rhythm of the song. I'm seated in a leather armchair. A jazz record plays softly with the characteristic crackling of a vinyl. I don't immediately notice the old man who has watched me, surprised from an armchair which matches the one I sit in. What I do, however, notice I'm not certainly in the room in the little hotel near the station in Glasgow. I look down. I wear a very short dress with a thick berry red tights. My nails are painted bubblegum pink. My hair is shorter, probably around my shoulders, and I think I caught a glimpse a strand of bright pink out of the corner of my eye. A man facing me clears his throat to get my attention. I'm sorry, I spaced out there for a second. You were saying? The guy gives a mischievous chuckle. Good try, but you have to do a little better to explain why you just materialized in my office. LOL. He speaks with a calm, almost melodious voice, with that profoundly British, slightly drawling tone that one usually associates with the aristocrats. Pullman, Arthur Pullman. Nice to meet you. I'm Alice. I've been looking for you for some time, Mr. Pullman. Please, call me Arthur, or Art if you prefer. He leans forward and holds out his hand. I shake it. I suppose you've just listened to the record, haven't you? Believe it or not, after all these years, it's the first time I personally witnessed a realignment, and I'd like to thank you for the experience. Someone knocks on the door. Come in. An elegant-looking middle-aged man pushes the door and places a tray with a steaming teapot and 2 mugs on a side table. He doesn't seem surprised to find me here. I thought you might like a cup of tea. He walks over to Arthur and plants a quick kiss on his lips. Right, I'll leave you to talk. Thank you, David. David leaves the room. As you see, for my partner, your presence here is completely normal. Arthur pauses for a moment, thinking. Now I suppose that after all the efforts you must have gone to find me, you no doubt have a lot of questions. Fire away. You said it's the first time you witnessed a realignment? What does that mean? How can I explain this simply? Let's just say it's one of the possible effects of choros. The choros? Yes, the choir of the gods if you prefer. That's what we call the vibration of the record during the joining time. What do you call it then? I shrug. I don't know, I just say the record? Arthur smiles. Yes, that probably make more sense. Each time that someone listens to the record, reality changes to adapt to the modification the person has made to their past. Our memory, our recollection, the sums of what we are, as if it were, remains intact. And there is a principle of economy, if you wish, makes the changes as limited as possible. It's extremely difficult, indeed, very probably impossible, to instill a global change. Generally speaking, someone listening does not affect others, but it does sometimes happen that one is the eyewitness of a change in reality. Objects are people who appear or disappear before your eyes, or more rarely, the geographical movement of the witness themselves. I call this the realignment, and that's exactly what happened. You went back to your past to find out where I lived, didn't you? I nod. And the record sent you to the moment in the past where you could obtain that information? Yes, that's exactly what happened. Which is why you're here. You know, your intel is the principal factor which determines the moment of your life which the record makes you relive. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. That's the reason I saw you appear in my office just moments ago. But how to explain that you were aware of my sudden appearance when your partner reacted as though nothing odd had happened? I don't really have an explanation. Or at least I'm not prepared to suggest something that I'm not completely sure about. Nobody truly knows how it all works. Generally speaking, the person who heard of Choros is the only person who is aware that reality has changed. I think back to Marie and Robin. That explains why they had no memory of Jean-Baptiste. Perhaps I simply had the good luck to be in the same room as you in the moment of realignment. As for David, he simply wasn't present for this quite singular occasion. For him, you probably arrived at Bullskin earlier, entering by the front door, and then we shut ourselves away in my office to talk. Tell me more the record, not the place. You seem to know how the record works. Can you tell me more? No is a big word. But yes, if you consider that I'm one of the handful of people in the world who have heard of the Choros, I suppose it gives me some authority on the question. What do you want to know? Okay, undo the effects. Is it possible to undo the effects of the record? No, it's impossible, I'm sorry. Once you heard the Choros, you can't go back. Even if, by some miracle, you managed to come back to a reality very close to your original reality, you wouldn't be the same. You remember where you lived listening to the record and living inside other versions of yourself. Unless... Pullman leans back into his chair and seems to be lost in thought for a while. Theoretically, if someone went back to the past and stopped you from listening to the record, he breaks off. No, that wouldn't work though. You would no longer be conscious of the existence of Choros, but as you heard it in your original reality, you would have inevitably be different from who you would have been if your past had not been modified. A sigh escapes me. So even if the record's available to me, I could never completely return to my original reality? No, I'm sorry. But you said even with the record available. Do you realize you don't have the record available to you anymore, don't you? Shoot. I suddenly realize I haven't checked if I still have the record with me. I grab my bag, which rests at my feet, frantically rifling through it, trying not to panic. Clearly, the record is not there. Alice, I understand your reaction, but do try to stay calm. Where were you just before you materialized here? In a hotel room in Glasgow? The record stayed there then? Pullman nods. Yes, I'm afraid so. Can I use your telephone? I tell myself the chances of me finding it are slim, but I have to try. Arthur points to the office door. In the entrance hall. Turn right when you go to the office and then left at the end of the corridor. I'll wait here. Thanks. I have trouble finding the entrance. I had no trouble finding the entrance hall. The telephone is on a small desk across the front door. I'm about to pick it up when I notice my reflection in the large mirror which hangs in the wall above the desk. It takes me several moments to realize that the image I see reflected is my own. As I suspected, my new appearance is poles apart from the one I had before listening to the record. I'm wearing a canary yellow mandarin collar dress, embellished with brightly colored floral motifs, a pleated and apple green jacket, and to top it off, bright red opaque tights. Teamed up with my new hairstyle, a fuchsia pink bob with thick straight bangs, I look like a popsicle. I guess in this reality, I allow myself the liking for pop music to be liberally expressed. Why not embrace it? It'll probably take me some time to get used to the boldness of this style choice, which I will now have to do, but I find the idea of living with this new version of myself surprisingly attractive, even almost self-evident. I turn myself away from my reflection and pick up the phone before I realize that I don't know Alan's number by heart. I run through my bag and find my cell phone to see if it's connected to a British operator. The lack of bars tell me that it's not going to be much of help, seeing as there's no signal here. I look through the directory and quickly find an entry for Alan with a cell phone number. It seems I know Alan in this reality too. Considering he never listened to the record, the chances that he's in Glasgow are extremely thin, but I have to try. He picks up after a few rings. Hi? Hello, Alan. It's Alice. Oh, hello, Alice. I didn't recognize the number. There's no signal where I am. I'm calling from a landline. Is everything okay? Yes. Tell me, are you by any chance in Glasgow? No, I'm in London. But aren't you supposed to be in Glasgow? I decided to get to the point before I lose control of the conversation. I've got no idea what Alan knows or doesn't know in this reality. Yes, tell me, would you by any chance have the number of the hotel where I was staying? Hang on, I think you called me from your room a few days ago. I'll check the call logs. I hear beeps and some swearing through the headset as Alan battles with his phone to get the information. Here it is. You got something to write with? I dig a pen and a scrap of paper out of my bag. Alan reads the number out to me. I tell him I don't have time to chat and that I have to run. He asks me to call him when I have more time. I briskly hang up the phone, and then I pick up again and dial the number to the hotel. As I waited, listening to the dial tone, I realized that I scribbled the number down at the bottom of the bill for my stay in the Station Hotel Glasgow. The conversation with Alan wasn't necessary after all, but I admit it was reassuring to hear his voice, and especially to know we aren't strangers to each other in this new reality. I explain my situation to the receptionist. She tells me that no, I've forgotten nothing in my room which I checked out of the day before last. I insist. She asks me that actually a woman had come into the hotel in the afternoon and that she asked to get back a vinyl record which had been forgotten in room number 23. The room hadn't been let for at least 2 weeks, with the woman urging she finally agreed to check. And she had been astonished when in fact there was a vinyl record on a little travel record player in room 23. She confirms that yes, she let the woman take the record and that she's sorry, but that I would have been in room 17, that she couldn't have guessed that the record belonged to me, and actually on the subject, she would like to know how I managed to get into room 23. I could tell her it's not important, however, if she could tell me the name of the person who reclaimed the record, that would be great. She told me she hadn't thought to ask for her name, but it was a woman, middle-aged, with white hair, wearing a dark pantsuit. I thank her and hang up and hiss Eva between my teeth before the headset is even resting back on its support. I return to the office. Palma has changed the music in my absence. He's smoking a cigarette by the window while he waits for me. Oh, excuse me. He stubs out in an ashtray left on the exterior windowsill. David's forbidden me from smoking inside. We've compromised on this. I love to quit, but I'm afraid it's rather late for this old dog to start learning new tricks. He sits back down behind his desk. So? I'm afraid someone already got the record. Let me guess. A woman in her 40s answers to the name of Eve Lorenz, am I right? Do you know her? Arthur lets out a sigh. Oh yes, I've known her since she was a child. I haven't seen her in more than 10 years. How have you known her for so long? I was a member of the commune where she was born, in Germany. I would, let us say, quite close to her father, Ernest Lorenz. Pullman breaks off and stares out of the window, his gaze far away for a minute. Anyway, I prefer that she haven't gotten her hands on the record. To be perfectly honest, I suspected that I'd hear from her again, sooner or later. Someone knocks on the door. Yes? Art, dinner will be ready soon. I assume you'll be staying at the manor tonight, Alice? I've already made a guest room for you. You did quite right, David. Alice and I still have a lot to discuss. We'll pick this up after dinner. Thank you. Thank you for your hospitality. You're very welcome. We love having people stay in the manor. It's a big house. It's made for entertaining. I allow my host into the dining room. David has cooked up a simple but delicious meal. He serves me a glass of red wine while he scrutinizes me with a piercing, curious gaze. So tell me, Alice, what do you do? I imagine it has to do with music, considering how much time you're spending with art. I smile and take a sip of wine, winning myself some time to think. I admit to myself that I have no idea. One thing's for sure, I'm certainly not a banker, not in this reality. On the other hand, I could answer vaguely that I work in music, which isn't exactly a proven fact, but it does seem in line with this new reality. On the other hand, I could answer honestly that I tell him that I work in a bank, in spite of all these clues which suggest that it's now extremely improbable. I work in a bank. Really? I'm sure you must be one way or another in the music business. David raises his eyes quizzical. Let's just say, going through a career change right now. Arthur cuts us off. Davy, surely you're not going to interrogate our guests, are you? No, sorry, I don't mean to pry. I hope I haven't made you feel awkward. I try to point the discussion in a less prickly direction. How do you know Arthur? My dad was Latina, my mom American, and I grew up in the Queens. I met Art in the club in East Village, and he was a local correspondent for BBC. It took him a few years to persuade me to move to London with him, but I'm happy to say I don't regret it a bit. Arthur, who has risen to clear away our plate, stroked his partner's shoulder with affection. Cheese or straight to dessert? Cheese! David gives me a winning smile. Whatever you prefer, Alice, but if we put the cheese on the table, it'll give me an excuse to eat it. Cheese! I never say no to a cheese board, thanks. Arthur disappears into a kitchen with our plates. Art never talks about his youth. I really think it's a shame. He had the chance to see the biggest spans of the 70s. He got some incredible live recordings. Arthur returns with a cheese board and clean plates. Did you make her listen to your recording of Miles of the Schaffner Music Festival? Art managed to capture the last concert of Miles Davis' electric period. It's truly incredible. Alice isn't here for that, David. Don't listen to this party pooper. He doesn't like talking about his youth. It's mostly because that pier is pretty fuzzy to me. Yes, the world must have been horribly drab before you met me, Art. I laugh. They're both charming and cultured. I'm having a very pleasant evening. We talk about music, about everything and nothing. Arthur tells me about his radio show on the BBC and his life in London in the 90s. By the time we get to the coffee, it was already quite late. David excused himself to go to bed, but not without first showing me the way to my room. Then Arthur and I go to the living room to continue our conversation. It's a cozy room. There's an old stone fireplace with 2 leather armchairs and a couch placed in front of it. Arthur puts a log on the hearth while I take a seat in one of the armchairs. Can I get you a nightcap? Cognac, whiskey? I prefer something much lighter. Arthur pokes at the bar. There's a bit of port. Will that do? Perfect, thanks. Arthur leans back at ease in the armchair. I take a deep breath. There's something bothering me. What must I do to get the record back? Do you know where I can find Eva and her organization? Arthur gestures me to have a little patience. Yes, I think I know where you can find Eva in the record. But I'd like to start by telling you my story. I think, or at least I hope, that this will all make much more sense to you when you know about my experience. Very well. I'm listening. Pullman takes a gulp of whiskey and puts his glass down on the coffee table. The year I turned 22, I joined a hippie commune in Germany, in the south of Bavaria, a few miles from Munich. I was young and I dreamed of freedom. I had a terrible middle-class family and I thought that I'd better get a move on and have a few adventures before my ingrained middle-class sensibilities could take root. So I took a ferry for the continent and I wandered around France and Italy for a few months before taking up residence in the commune in the Bavarian countryside. And that is where I met Ernest Lorenz. For a while he was my mentor, maybe even my friend. He was an extremely cultured man with incredible charisma. Cult leader? Question mark? He was over 30, one of the oldest of us, which gave him some sort of natural authority. The commune aimed to be staunchly democratic, but in reality, it was often he who guided in the direction and who decided when a decision needed to be taken for the governing of the community. We did live a carefree existence. We cultivated the land, we did a little crafting, wickerwooding, pottery, to exchange for all that we couldn't produce ourselves. And there was music every night. We took acid frequently. But it didn't last. Oh, I suppose it didn't last. Arthur's face is bleak. No, you're right. I was naive to have thought it could have. Eva was born the year before I arrived. Her mother, a young woman in the commune, died in childbirth. Oh, maybe Eva's trying to Say her mother? Ernest adopted her as if he were her father, which was certainly a possibility, but was absolutely not a certainty. In the era of free love, the concept of monogamy was pretty hazy for the members of the community. Whatever the case, he raised her as his daughter. Eva was an odd child. She was clever, precocious. She often seemed more adult than child. I found out years later that Ernest had made her listen to the record several times during her childhood so she could be liberated as soon as possible from the yoke of reality. I have no idea what the effects of Koros could be on such an immature psyche, but I imagine it must have been a determining factor in the construction of her identity. How did the record fit into all of this? Oh, it was always right there, right in the commune's beginning. It belonged to Ernest originally. He never wanted to reveal where it came from. I think his father had discovered it in some way or another and had it engraved on acetate. Ernest was from a very wealthy family. He created a commune after he inherited the land which belonged to his family. I didn't learn that until much later. Things started to change in the second half of the 70s. Little by little, Ernest's position had become more radical. It was insidious, but the commune began to gradually change from a quasi-religious splinter group. Yep, cult leader. The enchanted interlude of the hippie era was ending, and not just in our community. There had always been new arrivals and departures in the commune. And then there was a time when, without us noticing, the tide changed. The departures became more frequent than the arrivals. Can you tell me more about that time? What do you mean by a quasi-religious splinter group? I don't like the word sect, but that's exactly what it looked like. Little by little, Ernest became a guru, and we were a handful of diehards from the outset who haven't left the commune. The people who joined us afterwards, they weren't the same caliber as the early residents. I probably should have left then. But to be completely honest, I believe that I was petrified by the idea of reintegrated into society. It was during those years that Ernest revealed the existence of the record to me for the first time. I think only the closest and most devoted members knew about it, even at the start of the commune. I heard Koros for the first time in 1981. It was an incredible experience, all of it, as it was all for the initiatives. I relived the times in the first years of the commune, moments of simple happiness in bygone days. For a very long time, I had no idea that the Koros would allow you to change the past. Ernest needed me to manage the day-by-day organization of the commune, and that suited me to a T. By 1985, there were only a handful of early yearly residents left. There was Ernest, his daughter Eva, 3 other followers, and myself. We moved into the great Lorenz family mansion. I had become the de facto personal secretary of Ernest Lorenz. Yeah. Excuse my bluntness, but where did the money come from to finance all that? Arthur smiles and takes a mouthful of whiskey. Officially, from generous donors. Ernest always kept me away from the dark side of the organization. With hindsight, I think some of the members were assigned to financing. It was so much easier to make a fortune on the financial markets when one can go back to the past and take risks which aren't really risks. I mean, it must seem strange to you, but to be perfectly honest, it was quite a pleasant life. It took some time for me to mourn the loss of those hippie ideals, but once I got into the new routine, well, I don't really regret those years. In that case, what made you leave? A combination of various factors. For the time, the RFA intelligence service has been watching us. Like the sword, the menace of their strike on our network hung over us. Ernest was struck into a kind of permanent paranoia which only worsened with time. With hindsight, I'm sure it was a warning sign of his illness. With the fall of the Soviet Union, we took advantage of the chaos generated by their reunification to emigrate to the other side of the Iron Curtain, to Prague. I think it was Eva who whispered that idea in her father's ears. I imagine she realized that, with all the upheaval, she'd have the opportunity to carve herself out a more important and decisive role in the organization. Which is exactly what happened. So, the organization relocated again and presented itself as in kind of occult allegiance club, vaguely Masonic, at least from the exterior. The Ion Karos Lodge. What does that mean? As you may guess, the name wasn't chosen by chance. The concepts are rather complicated to explain. Do you want to hear the long version or short version? Tell me all the information. I sit back in my armchair. Let's try the long version if you don't mind. Pullman sighs. As I told you, I wasn't very abreast of what you might call mystic part of our organization. Even if I was pretty much in charge of the operational aspect of our activities, of course, I asked Ernest about it. What did he tell you? These are 3 terms which correspond to different aspects of temporality for the ancient Greeks. The notion of chronos is the easiest to understand. That's what we modern men simply call time. One could, at a push, translate aion as the notion of eternity, and as for kairos, that's more difficult to explain. It's the deciding moment, the infinitesimal moment when everything changes. Do you see what I mean? Yes, it's perfectly clear. I try to think of my own experience with the record and reliving those moments of change and the results rippling of transformation. The choice to associate eternity and the deciding moment, as you would say, the aion and the kairos. It's almost poetic. But all that doesn't tell me how you managed to escape. Sorry, you're right. I'm afraid I got a bit off track there. I try to stick to the basic, but I could talk to you all night without getting through everything that happened during those 20 years of my life. Anyway, it was a move to Prague which marked the beginning of the end for me. Ernest was suffering from an early onset and aggressive strain of Alzheimer's disease, undiagnosed, of course. While we were staying in Bavaria in the house that he had always known, I think he managed to counteract his progressive memory loss. In a completely new environment, however, his condition worsened rapidly. Eva became more and more important, finally superseding her father as the head of the organization. Little by little, she moved me to the sidelines. When Ernest died in '91, I really began to question my own commitment to the lodge. I suppose you would call it a midlife crisis, but the fact is I wanted to change my life. And also, while Ernest and I simply defended our ways in life, Eva had other ambitions. She is the most diligent student at the chorus, to which she had access all the time, unlike the other initiatives who only had a chance to listen to the record during special ceremonies which are organized twice a year. Do you know what Eva's plans were originally? She certainly must have had a vision when she took charge of your organization. Oh, I wasn't completely in their confidence even during Ernest's time, but it became worse when Eva took reign of the lodge. What I'm sure of is that yes, she had plans and ambitions and that the record was necessary for her to realize them. However, I don't believe that even the most initiated knew the full scope of the plan she was fomenting? You're familiar with the saying, divide and conquer? That's exactly how Ernest and Eva functioned. But without Ernest's reason and wisdom to curb her, I'm afraid that Eva would drive us to lose everything. It already began a long time since I felt I belonged in an organization, but after Ernest's death, there was nothing more to keep me there. So I used the ceremonial chorus in the spring of 1991 to change my past. And without knowing it, I managed to break the rules and move the record out of Prague. But you told me that the record couldn't be moved geographically while being listened to. There's a loophole in that rule. Let me explain. Having spent most of my adult life in the commune, then in Lorent's house, the chorus systematically sent me back, give or take a few years, to the same place. I had very little maneuvering room to change anything in my past. This time was no different. What was different, however, was that I was desperate. I realized I couldn't escape by changing the moment the chorus had sent me to, so I listened to the record again in the past. Interesting. This time, the record took me to London before my departure for the commune, which gave me an opportunity just to decide not to go. And when you came back to the present, you were a radio presenter on the BBC? Exactly. Not only did I find myself sitting in the treasure trove of live recordings of all the greatest bands in the 70s, but also I was in a relationship with a charming, funny, cultured man who you had met earlier. On the one hand, this time, the change the Kronos had wrought on my life was radical, and my new life had almost nothing in common with my original reality. But on the other hand, I'm free and I've never regretted my decision. What happened after? I suppose that Eva must have tried to find you? Oh, yes. It was very difficult to find Arthur Pullman, radio presenter of the Great British Airwaves. She came to see me in London, maybe 1 month after my departure. At that time, I had no idea that the record had disappeared. When she realized I didn't have it, she left me alone. She could have wanted revenge. In a way, you saw her inheritance in the source of her authority. You know, despite of all our failings and shortcomings, the lodge remained the successor of the hippie ideal. Eva would have chosen a non-violent option. What was done was done. The record had disappeared into the Bavarian countryside. And as for authority, you met her, haven't you? With or without the quarrel, she's always kept the iron grip of her rule of the organization. Anyway, there it is. You know what came after. There's something I don't understand. What happened to the record? I think it materialized in a place where I listened to it again in the past while I heard the chorus. So, in the location of the commune in Bavaria? That's it. Ernest wanted to sell the property when we moved to Prague. The money from the sale allowed them to finance a large residence in the Mala Strana district near Charles Bridge. And then whoever bought the Lorenz family house, they found the record? Probably, but it's a bit more complicated than that. The property was transformed into a hotel after the sale. The type of place you rent out for weddings, you know. I nod. A needle in a haystack situation, then? Indeed. Besides, I never heard any more about the record, especially those legends hawked by the record collectors, the store owners, and other musicians, which I have resisted adding to. No, at least not until you materialized in my office earlier. Thank you. It must have been easy. It mustn't have been easy to go back after all that after so many years. Arthur gestures that there's no problem with a wave of his hand. Oh, I guess this business will resurface sooner or later. As I told you, I regret not destroying the record when I had the chance. Perhaps I could have ended all this. He finishes his drink with one swallow and checks his watch. However, I hope you'll excuse me, but it's late. We'll finish this conversation tomorrow if you don't mind. Wait, one more thing. Wait, you haven't told me how to find the record again. Arthur lets out a sigh. The record's probably in Prague. I'll give you the details tomorrow, don't worry. Come on, I'll walk you to your room. The Bolskin guest room is a large room, decorated in a cozy, rustic style, with an adjoining bathroom. My travel bag rests on an upholstered seat at the foot of the bed. My host certainly knows how to receive their guests. I go quickly through my bag and realizing that it probably doesn't contain the same things as before I listened to the record. Without surprise, I discover it was overflowing with a colorful, eclectic selection of clothes. I take out my wash bag and a pair of short pajamas with a watermelon print. Then I get undressed and discover, this time to my surprise, that my arms and thighs are covered with colorful tattoos which are quite as eclectic as my new wardrobe. I go to the bathroom to observe my new image in the mirror. A new version of me is decidedly strange. After a quick shower, I slip between the sheets hoping the sleep would find me swiftly. I enter the kitchen shyly. David is reading newspaper as Arthur prepares scrambled eggs. The radio, probably tuned to the BBC, delivers this morning news report. It's he who noticed my presence at the doorstep. Oh, good morning, Alice. Did you sleep well? Obviously, with all my adventures of the previous day, my night has been a bit disturbed. But does Arthur really need to know that fact? I pass an excellent night, thank you. Arthur smiles. I'm delighted to hear. There's quite a few stories about the haunting of Bolskin. Since I live here, I've always slept very well, too. If you want my opinion, I believe that ghosts, if they exist, attach themselves to people, not the place. Pullman is thoughtful for a moment, then abruptly changes the subject. Do you like English breakfast? Do take a seat, please. I obey and sit down. David puts down his paper and picks up a coffee pot. Coffee? I hold up the mug in front of me. Yes, please. I hardly had time to take a mouthful of delicious, rejuvenating nectar when Arthur places this plate of scrambled eggs, sausage, and baked beans before me, to which he adds 2 slices of toast straight from the toaster. We eat in silence. David sips his coffee. Arthur seems engrossed by the radio. I finished my quite quickly, poured myself another cup of coffee, and used the quiet to try to reassemble my thoughts into better order. The first starting information is, it would seem, that Ulysses never reached Bullskin. Even if I haven't had the chance to ask him about it directly, I think that Arthur would have mentioned the visit of another person with questions about the record. I imagine that what happened was that after traveling to Glasgow, Ulysses probably backtracked to Paris, where he decided to send the record to me. I can only think of two reasons why he would give up his journey to Bullskin. Either he judged that his visit would be too dangerous. I suppose he was being closely followed by Eva and the members of her lodge. Realizing that the noose was tightening, perhaps he preferred to muddle the trails by changing his route and by getting rid of the record as fast as possible. The other option for him, too, the trail to Arthur, stopped in Glasgow. After all, I was only able to discover the address of Pullman's new home by returning to the past. It's possible he hadn't remembered that the sale of the bullskin had taken place and the person he was seeking was the one who had bought the property. So he could have returned to Paris to seek out a new lead, and then they must have caught up with him there. He sent the record to me rather than let Eva get her hands on it, which makes me more mad at the idea that it's my fault, that Eva finally was able to achieve her purpose. As for me, I finally found myself stuck in this new present, in this new life that I know nothing about. At least Alan still knows me, which is reassuring. But how about Patrice and Enzo, or the other people I've encountered during my journey? If one thing's for sure, is that there's no way this new Alice leads a tidy little life in Bordeaux. It all seems so far away, although only a few days have passed. Arthur's voice drags me from my reflection. I'm going to pick up post at the letterbox. If you'd like to come with me, Alice, it would be company for me, and it would give us a chance to finish our conversation. Dave is going to Inverness to do some shopping this morning. He'll drop you off the station. My hosts are certainly perfect. Not knowing how to express my gratitude, I content myself with saying, "Thank you." I pick up my plate and mug, and David gestures me to leave them in the sink. And after running to my room, I grab my coat. I join Arthur in the entrance hall, and we go out. Outside, the weather is cold and dreary. The green highlands and landscape is enveloped in the early morning mist which hasn't yet lifted. Arthur hands me a piece of paper. This is the address of the lodge in Prague. Now that Eva has a record, I think I can confirm that she'll take it back there. I like to do more to help you, but it's been 15 years since I severed my ties with that part of my life. You've already helped me enormously. I don't know how I'll ever thank you for your hospitality, for all the information you've given me about the record. Oh, there's no need to thank me. As I told you, I do feel rather responsible for what had happened to you. Pullman points to a lane which winds down from the house. The post box is at the end of the lane near the road. We start walking. So do you know what we're going to do? What am I going to do? Yes, when you leave Bullskin, I don't suppose it will be too difficult to find a flight from London to Prague. That's true, I haven't really considered the question. On one hand, Arthur's encouraged me insistently to try to get the record back. On the other, why should I really do it? I haven't had much information on this new reality except for a few clues I've been able to glean from my belongings. I could go home to Bordeaux and take some time before making any decisions. I could also stop by in London, drop in on Alan. It seems I know him in this new reality, but what's that relationship? And then there's Ulysses. If he never came to Bullskin, where could he be? I think back on our encounter just yesterday for me, 3 years ago for him. What does it mean by we don't need to break up anymore? It would have been so much simpler if I could just find him. No matter what, I'm not going to charge straight ahead to Prague. Not before I learn a little more about my new life. Let's stop in London. I'm going to start with the trip to London. There's someone I'd like to see. I'd like to know what our relationship is in this new reality. Arthur gives me a kind smile. I understand. I hope you find the answers to your questions, but don't lose sight of the fact that, how should I put it, you're still you deep down. I don't believe that the choices we make changes us in our deepest essence, if you see what I mean. Yes, you're probably right. I don't believe changing the past is a solution to my problems. I prefer to look forward. In any case, thanks again for this address in Prague and for everything else. Arthur just smiles at me this time. We reach the mailbox. He opens it, sees it's empty, and we head back to the house. David is waiting for us at the door. It would be a good idea we don't hang out too long. I like to be back for lunch. And anyway, the earlier we get going, the less difficulty you'll have finding a train, Alice. I nod. I just need a minute to get my things and I'm ready to go. A few minutes later, I climb into David's old 4x4, and then we leave Boleskine, heading for London via Inverness. Chapter 5. I cannot pronounce that, but this will be the end of our run today. We will pick this back up next time. Thanks for watching, and until next time.